Verde, where I met you, there was a woman in an electric wheelchair, and she was totally in Victorian garb. Other than that, it was so cool to see. Despite the fact that she was in a wheelchair, she still participated in the whole cosplay thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there.
Radio Retrofuture.
Show. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Radio Retrofuture. And as always, I'm Bonsert, and with me is Erlend Van Der Haegen from Belgium.
Hello.
But before the show, I want to announce a number of things. If you enjoy the content we have on our channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, you can always support us on Patreon if you feel like it. As always, the links are down below. Let's get back to our guest for today, Erlend Van Der Haegen, role-playing game developer.
That's right.
Yes, and let's just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into game developing.
Okay, well, I grew up in the 80s. The thing was, we had a lot of really great games back then when they were making a lot of commercials for it, and we all wanted them, and my parents wouldn't buy them for me because they were too expensive. Maybe you remember things like Hero Quest.
Oh, yeah.
Or in Dutch we had Spookslot. I don't know what the English version is. Yeah, it was with all these really gorgeous standards for the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make them myself because my parents wouldn't buy them for me. They were just too expensive, or they thought at least. Things happened, and now I'm a full-fledged game developer.
Okay, it's something you also do full-time?
I do this full-time. I have my own publishing company called Red-Eyed Rabbit. It's a lot of hard work because we actually do several full-time jobs at once, but it's also very rewarding work.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. And what does the other full-time jobs entail? Is that design work? Is it writing? All of it together?
Yes, all of it together. For example, for Ambrosia, I wrote the entire game, I developed it, I playtested it, I did the graphic work for it, I did the DTP for it, everything from getting an idea to getting it actually printed.
Well, let's just talk about Ambrosia, I suppose.
Right.
Because it's an RPG. You had the premiere this weekend on Spiel, I think?
Yes, actually, we did go to Spiel with the original Dutch version. But we are doing a Kickstarter right now to get it translated into English because we want to make sure it gets to as many people as possible, and we'd like to broaden our public, of course. And most of it is a game that's inspired by the history and the folklore of the historic Low Countries. So that's Belgium, where I'm from, and the Netherlands, where you're from, and also Luxembourg. And it's kind of like this little speck of land near the North Sea that everybody's heard of, but nobody really knows anything about, except for they have good beer and they have nice food, but and windmills and milkmaids and stuff like that, but nobody really knows anything about it. So we wanted to get the folklore and the history out there because it's actually we do have a very interesting history where historically we've been bordered by some of the biggest political and military powers in Europe, like England and Germany and France and Scandinavia. And we were like this little speck of land in between them, trying to resist getting attacked from all sides because obviously if France and England were in a war, which they often were, we were a great staging ground for them. And in medieval times, it was one country, actually, it was the Netherlands that we were also a part of.
Yeah, or London van herwaarts over. That's also a name that was used.
Yeah, right.
And all the alternative scenarios you could make with it, because it has such a... It's not the oldest state, but it is one of the oldest republics from modern history, at least.
Among us, we have some of the oldest cities in Europe, actually.
Yeah.
And Belgium, for example, has the second best waterways, actually, in the world. And the first best is actually the Netherlands.
Hmm.
So it's this history of these countries actually. They're very, as you know, you live there, are very watery countries. We get it's very moist here, um, and we do have these natural resources like the really creepy misty moors and polders and things like that. That's something you can actually make a great dark fantasy setting out of.
Hmm. Have you ever? I'm quite a fan of Shadowrun. Have you ever read Shadows of Europe?
Actually, I have to admit I haven't. No.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting, especially with the World of the Europort. But in Critters or Monsters of Europe, I'm not sure what of the two names, they actually have all these old mythical beings like
That's right.
Kludde and other
Yeah.
creatures rarely anyone ever heard of into it, and like what they would be like in a cyberpunk setting. It's really interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've basically got those creatures as well because the first half year of development was purely research, seeing what do all these folk tales give us, and most of the folk tales are not very usable. There's like the witch of Steenbrugge, and it goes like, in Steenbrugge there lives a witch. The end. So that's not something I can do a lot with, of
No,
course.
exactly.
But there are folk tales that actually go somewhere, and we did really base ourselves on those. Also, going very micromanagementy, which means we are a fantasy world. But if you go, for example, to the city of Stellum, which is our equivalent of Amsterdam, you will get some history and some folklore of that specific region, actually.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's a great teaching tool, isn't it? Like, what's tangential learning? Am I saying that correct?
I think
But
so.
I think that games, especially role-playing games, are such useful tools to educate children into, well, their local mythology, so to speak.
Absolutely. I started to get interested in history the moment that I left school because they gave these quite boring lessons. I'm really hoping that's changed by now. Then I started actually reading about the history of Belgium and about the history of the Netherlands, and it was pretty interesting. I say, for example, we had Clovis in Belgium, which was basically a barbarian warlord who tried to unite all the tribes under one banner. And his banner was Christianity, so he brought Christianity to Belgium. Not sure if that's always a good idea. The thing is, he did unite everyone. These are things that you can perfectly put in a fantasy setting or in any fictional setting, really. Things like that. We have been conquered by many nations in our history. We had from the French over the Spanish to Germans to even the Netherlands at one point. Uh, so we had all this experience. And when people think about Belgium and the Netherlands, they usually think about, as I said, good food and nice beers and friendly people and windmills and idyllic landscapes. But yeah, for example,
I'll tell you a little bit about this one, a bit of Dutch history behind it, but
Okay.
go on.
But actually, if you look at some of the artwork, the medieval artwork that we've got, I'm thinking about people like Hieronymus Bos.
Of course.
It's really dark and gritty. The things that he painted was like an acid-fueled nightmare. So it's yeah, there were a lot of wars. There was a lot of strife. There were it wasn't a very good time to live in, and that's what we want to convert in the game as well. That you're not in Kansas anymore. This is a dangerous setting. It's more something like Game of Thrones than, let's say, Warcraft or something.
Well, it's okay. Here, someone in the comments says, "Well, if you haven't occupied Belgium, you're not a real country." but yeah. Well, it's funny how those things, how you learn things. Like here, I have a beard called Jopen,
Yeah.
and there's actually a bit. I have a bit of personal history for with it because I did reenactment for like 14 years,
Yeah.
and somewhere in one of my first years. I was at the ruins of a castle called Brederode. Um, Little known fact, by the way, that the Netherlands had the highest density of castles in the world. Um, but yeah, the brewer was there to yeah kind of yeah show off his new beer. And the thing with the Jopen is it's called after a casket they used in Haarlem. Um, you know, they were very fond of taxing their beer. You know, so they had like caskets that all those barrels needed to be the same size. Because otherwise they would get in trouble with the taxes and stuff like that. So they had the Jopen in Haarlem. And this is basically the same recipe, or almost the same recipe, of the late 16th century, making it one of the oldest known. And it's based on fruit, not hops, but groot, I think they call it in English.
Oh.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
they're
I
all.
for myself, I have enough Dutch friends to know that you guys don't think Heineken is a real beer either. So
Yeah, yeah. It isn't. It isn't. It's pills actually.
yeah,
And that's already different from beer.
technically
But
it is. But
yeah, yeah. It's like soda,
yeah.
basically with alcohol in it. Um, yeah.
So that's one thing we have in the game as well. I thought it would be cool to have all the different beers of the different regions in the setting all written out. So you can say that region has a stout beer, and that region has more of a light beer that's got a fruity scent to it. And that region has a very dark beer because there are monks with black robes who brew it, and nobody really goes what in it. Nobody really knows what goes into it and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
No, it's funny, you know, because the late medieval period of the Netherlands was basically grown out of the beer trade.
Yeah,
Like they had hops in Germany, only the Germans didn't have the waterways that the Dutch had. So when the Dutch took hops, they started mass producing it, and because they had all this access to rivers and the sea, they could transport it over great distances. Because you know the benefit of hops is it also has a longer preservation time, so
yeah,
makes it easy to use for trade. So that's basically what you know made the Dutch great again.
yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, the Dutch were also known for their transport companies overseas,
yeah.
especially towards the Renaissance. Um, there was a lot of trading going on. The whole triangle trade between Europe, Africa, and the New World, the Americas, was very much also controlled by the Dutch.
Mhm.
That's a really great part
Oh
of
man, well,
history.
we could talk hours about this, and maybe we should. Maybe
Of
we
course.
should. But yeah, what period of the history have you taken
Well,
for your setting?
we've actually got a pretty broad part of history. I'm thinking 10th to 15th century and everything in between. It is still a fantasy setting, so it is completely fictional. But if you take a look at the map, you will see that it's very much Belgium and the Netherlands and Luxembourg, of course.
Yeah, it's here on the background, but it's also
yeah.
on your Kickstarter page, right?
That's right. But you will get a part of the First Crusade, which, if I'm remembering well at the top of my head, was 10th or 11th century.
First
and
one,
you
yeah, very late 11th century.
yeah, something like that, and mixed in with things like Flemish independence, which was 14th century. The whole what we call the Guldensporenslag,
Ah, right.
the famous battle in which one of the most famous Belgian weapons was used, the Goedendag.
I've got one. I think.
Yeah.
I still have it. I think I still got one. Yeah.
Pretty cool, which was actually used to throw the horsemen off their horses first, and when they were down in the mud, they would stab them with a pike. So that was how they mostly defeated the wealthier French invaders then. But there's also pieces from later in history that we just thought was too cool not to use. For example, there's a thieves' cant in the setting, which is called Bargoens, which is an actual thieves' cant that was used in Dutch in I think the 19th century. So that was way later, but we did use it because it was just so cool to have something like that. Also, our currencies in the game are based on real currencies. For example, the gold pieces are florins, which are still used. Not a coin, of course, but the FL sign.
Right.
Dutch
Right.
people still use for money.
No. We did use it, but
Yeah.
until the euro came,
in the guild, but I did see it used on Facebook or something by someone from Holland.
I'm sure there are people that are like,
Yeah,
well, we need the euro back, you know. But
yeah. But that's a thing that's also used in our setting actually. A nice piece of historical trivia is, for example, also that because we're talking about the Gulden, that people in Holland used to say piek to it, like give me 10 piek. That's from the
right,
Dutch
yeah.
word for pike, and that's because on the original coins, the heraldry of the royal pikemen was actually engraved. So things like that we want to try and sneak in there. They're just pieces of flavor, they're pieces of fluff. They don't have any interest in the game mechanics or something, but it's also nice to have them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you know, the tangential learning, just by adding such
Yeah,
things to the game, people, you know, want to learn more about it. Where does it come from, and stuff
absolutely.
like that. Are there any specific heroes or characters that were inspired by historical individuals
Yeah.
that you used?
Absolutely. That's more like historical figures. So, for example, for the Netherlands, there is a William of Orange type character.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. For Belgium, we have, for example, a folk hero called Tijl Uilenspiegel. And there's a character like that in it. They're more like legends, but people do talk about them.
Yeah.
And people do know them. But for example, Willem van Oranje, or William of Orange in English, he did rebel against the Spanish in his time, Spanish occupation. So we do have a rebel leader in our setting who's kind of inspired by that.
Yeah, well, oh man, I did a lot of study into the 80 Years' War, and William of Orange is such an intriguing individual.
Absolutely.
In so many levels, he was charismatic, and he wasn't particularly good with money. That was probably his greatest flaw.
Yeah.
But, you know, he had garnered so much support for what was basically going to be the first not monarchy in Europe. So, very interesting character. And Tijl Uilenspiegel, yeah, well, he's also very well known in the Netherlands as a prankster, basically.
Oh.
Kind of a well, not necessarily Joker, but very mischievous character that was always fooling the rich. Well, everyone actually.
That was a big part of the resistance movement against the Spanish here, because they were Mediterranean, and they were very macho, as we say it, and a lot of it was trying to ridicule them out of the country. There were a lot of things that were going on that were really harmless, and there was no blood spilled, but they were just ridiculing them. Like in Antwerp, where I'm from, they would go to the doors of known collaborators, and take a big sheet and throw a doll up and down in front of their windows while singing a song, just to say, we're just throwing a doll in the air, but you're next, and to scare them off. But it was actually just ridiculing them. It was purely harmless. They never really killed anyone or anything.
No, well, it was a bloody civil war. What can you say?
Afterwards, yeah.
Yeah. But more about the game itself. What does it make it stand out from other role-playing games that people have seen on the market till now?
Yeah, we're really very much trying to do. We're trying to bring storytelling back into role-playing, because a lot of mostly American games that I see are very much about tactical combat.
Mm-hmm.
You have a grid, you have miniatures, and you really need to see what you're doing, because every 5 feet that you take might be worth something.
Right,
and we want to make it more of a storytelling game. You will be able to do those epic things, but it's all in your mind. And the point is that you tell a story with the players around you. In many games, it's the game master that takes the lead and just takes the players by their hands and leads them across through the dungeon or across the land or whatever it is, and you don't really have any choice in it. And we're trying to bring that element very much back to role-playing. We want to say the players have as much to say in the story as the game master does. So we want to get rid of railroading, we want to get rid of closed endings or fixed endings. So all our scenarios are very much open-ended. And the idea is also that we know there are systems out there are many systems out there. People aren't necessarily waiting for a new system. But what we also want to do is make a good story. Mm-hmm. We want to give people a chance to live through a story with real motivations, not just we're a party of adventurers and we're here to save the day because we've got nothing better to do, but really make the story about you as a character. I usually say to use the biggest fantasy cliche imaginable, you as a character are the chosen one in a fantasy story. Mm-hmm. We're not gonna do that. I feel a bit cheap for just suggesting it even, but we really want to make this story about you and not just you being a tourist happening by and saving the day.
Okay, it kind of reminds me of a system like Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah.
World of Darkness, more precisely. Is it something like that?
That was a big inspiration for me, actually. I've played Vampire the Masquerade, then not the New World of Darkness, for years on end, and I was one of the people who was actually very much into the well-known Gehenna storyline. That was the meta plot. I really wanted to know how this would end, and I was very invested in it. So that's what I want to do with our scenarios as well. So we're gonna bring out complete campaigns that give your character a chance to level up from minimum to maximum level, and the decisions that you make as a character in one campaign will form the world in the next campaigns. So it's very interactive. We wanted to make it as interactive as possible.
And what kind of dice does the system use? Does it use various types, or just D6, or just D10?
Like in Vampire and other World of Darkness games, it's only D10s, so 10-sided dice. And normally, as a player, you should suffice with just one die. But we are giving a rather unique game mechanic to the players to influence their dice rolls. Because just speaking for myself, I'm the guy who always throws ones. I know this. If I take a look at systems that use several dice, if you get better in a skill, you can just throw a more-sided die. Well, if I throw a D4, I throw a 1. If I throw a D20, I throw a 1. So there's no difference there. So I wanted to give players really an influence in the dice. So every player character has dice pools that they can use to manipulate dice rolls. For example, if you're the game master, you can tell me to jump over that cliff. You need a dexterity check, and you need to get 12 or more. So I throw a 10-sided dice. I add my dexterity value. Sometimes I get bonuses from skills like acrobatics and stuff. But the result has to be 12 or more. If it's not, I can use my dice pools to increase the results even more. The thing is, once those dice pools are depleted, you are, of course, you have to be lucky at that point, or very skillful. But those dice pools do give you a direct hand in manipulating the story. If you can say, there's no way that my character can fail that jump, if you're basically playing Legolas or something, and you want to jump over that ravine, it would be very silly if you're just unlucky and you throw a 2 or something and you don't make it. So that's the power we want to give players. You can manipulate dice and you can say, no, I want to do this. There's in no way a moment that the game master will have to do something just because it's in the scenario.
Right. Okay, and you already talked a little bit about World of Darkness. Are there any other games or franchises maybe that inspired the system and the setting?
Yeah, very much Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as well.
Oh yeah.
It's also a dark and gritty setting, of course, but I myself have very fond memories about playing and running the Enemy Within campaign, which is a very well-known campaign for Warhammer, and it has some elements that also come up in my own storytelling. For example, the idea that the story is about you in The Enemy Within, it's also about one of the characters. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, of course, for people who haven't played it yet, but we are trying to incorporate elements like that into it.
All right. And are there any particular, you already talked about systems, is there any other franchise that inspired it, or just the Warhammer setting in general?
Well, of course, like many people nowadays, I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones, for example. Great series. I don't want to read the books because I think it would lessen my enjoyment of the series. So I'm staying away from that because everybody who read the books is saying, "Oh, they're so much better than the series," but I don't want that. I'm content with what I have. And most often also the political intrigue that you get in there. That's something you also had, for example, in Vampire. The political element was very important, but we're trying to make a combination between political play and the real classic adventuring. The exploring, the finding the ancient tomb of what's his name, things like that. But most often also combine this with the velvet battlefield of the noble courts, who are also having their own agenda and doing all these things. I often say to people, we're giving you the opportunity to play a nobleman or a commoner, and commoners are basically slaves. they're quite literally the property of the nobility, like it was in medieval times. So people say, why would I want to play a commoner? I'd be a slave. Yes, you have less rights, and the nobility have more privileges, but life is also much more dangerous for the nobility because, for one thing, if they're, for example, if they're dueling, it's to the death. If you insult some courtesan lady, then you will have to be challenged to a duel if her honor is challenged in this way. So she will have a champion. This really big guy in full plate mail with a really big sword, and you will have to fight him over her honor, and you will probably lose because this guy is a trained soldier, and well, let's hope you are as well.
Are you also, you already said you don't want the dungeon crawling, but do you have ideas for miniatures and dungeons like that?
No, right now we're not doing that. Also because we want to make the game accessible for everyone. Many games have the idea or at least the sales philosophy that you have to buy a book and technically you can start playing, but then they've got this whole range of miniatures that you don't have to buy them, but it's you're strongly persuaded to buy them. And we don't want to fall into that same trap. Actually, we just want to bring out a good game that everyone can enjoy. And you don't have to spend hundreds of or thousands of euros or dollars to get it.
Okay. We'll save the price for the basis of the game for last. But you also went to Spiel this
that's
weekend.
right.
And how was the reception there?
It was very good. I actually sold a couple of the Dutch version of Ambrosia because there was a lot of people there from Belgium and the Netherlands. Actually, many times I was doing my explanation in English for 20 minutes, and then they said, "Oh, we also speak Dutch." So that happened to me a lot there. But yeah, Spiel in Essen is a very busy fair. It's I think I saw literally thousands of people there to get the word out. So I'm hoping we can reach a truly international audience with that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because it is your ambition to publish a English version.
Yeah, that's right.
So how is that going?
It's going pretty well. We've had some very interesting feedback from people who already backed it or just people who saw the Kickstarter and commented on it. One big thing that we got a lot was primarily that there wasn't any PDF pledge available.
Right.
So that's something we changed this week. As soon as I got back from Germany, of course. So there are much reasonabler, is that the word? Priced pledges available now for just the PDFs. And that also opens a lot of doors to countries where it's quite hard to get shipping to.
Right.
We had a few questions from people from Australia, for example. Well, as soon as you have to cross water, shipping becomes very difficult.
Ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, we see that it's actually easier for us to ship to France or Germany than it is to ship to England, which isn't that far off.
No, England is ridiculously expensive. Yeah. I got a book from Gary Nichols' Imaginarium. Wonderful photo book. But you know, the shipping was half the price of the entire thing. It was oh man, I know.
And you could say for England they have to pay for their boats and fuel and stuff, but we do have a tunnel now, so that's actually not an excuse.
Yeah, I think there's something else going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you already mentioned, the PDFs people can earn through the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Any other worthwhile traits you want to announce?
Well, there are some interesting stretch goals. That's, for example, to get a Game Master screen, which is included in the Dutch version, but it's a stretch goal for the English version. There's an introductory scenario called Devil's Winter that we also give as a stretch goal, which is actually kind of based on my personal comments on most introductory adventures. If you buy a starter kit for most games, you get a flimsy booklet that's an introductory adventure, and you can play it for one session, and then you have to buy the rest, of course.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give you an introductory adventure that's actually 5 or 6 sessions worth. So that is 15 to 20 hours of gameplay. And we wanted to show you some parts of the setting, but also a couple of things that are more unique to the gameplay, like the open-ended scenarios, like the thing where you just pick where you're going and you're not really forced into one single direction. And we couldn't do that in a single session, of course. So we tried to distribute it over several sessions.
Okay. Are there opportunities for people in the Netherlands to play test this, or that they get an idea?
Absolutely. I myself have been giving demos for the last couple of months on a weekly basis, really. So I don't know if there's any people left who haven't had a demo yet, but we're giving them all over the place. We've been to the major Belgian cities, also smaller stores. We've been to Amsterdam, Utrecht, Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and we're going to a lot more places as we go along. So just to get the word out, we are trying to make an original new game concept, and the only way to see if people like it or not is by playing it, of course.
Yeah.
So I can of course give you a complete explanation, but
Yeah, exactly.
you won't be able to compare it to anything that exists. You can say it's a role-playing game like another role-playing game, but it really isn't.
Right. Well, let me know if you ever go to the Spelkwartier in Arnhem or something.
We're always open for it.
Okay. Yeah. So, final question, I suppose. What is your hope for your game or for your company? Do you already have a new game planned, or is Ambrosia all you're thinking about right now? And do you have special ambitions for that?
Well, with the Kickstarter, of course, all our attention is poised at Ambrosia right now. We do have several other games that came out. We have Mandrago, which is a tile-based game where you're adventurers in a mystic forest, and you have to find magical roots. The idea about that is it's a memory-based game, so you can win it either by a good tactical thinking, good strategy, in which case adults should be better than children in that, but you can also win it by having a really good memory, and children are usually better than that. So what we're trying to do is get adults and children back around the gaming table, and you don't have to pull your punches as an adult. You don't have to say I'm gonna let my child win because it'll boost his self-esteem.
Right.
You also don't have to go I'm gonna go all out on them because it builds character to lose. You don't have to do that. We're leveling the playing field. We're totally making you equals in this game.
Okay.
That's a nice thing. We also have Figment, which is kind of a proto role-playing game for very young children. It's card-based, but you play a fantasy character, and you have to learn to work together to defeat monsters, which is also very good for children. It's ages 6 and up, because they learn to see that they've got differences, and that these differences aren't just not a bad thing, but they're even very useful, because you have to combine your skills. Just think about it. If you play D&D and you have a party composed of all level 1 wizards, you're not getting very far.
Right,
That's
yes.
the idea. But if you got a wizard and a rogue and a fighter and a mage is the same thing, and a cleric, then you will make it, because their combined skills are better than the sum of their parts,
Okay.
of course.
And have what age?
6 to 12 is our is set on the box. But of course, I always say, if you're 14 and you still like the game, we're not gonna sue you. just enjoy it.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? Or...
Right now, I'm very busy writing the first campaign for Ambrosia, which is already part of the Kickstarter. So that's under construction right now. It should be out early to half next year, depending on how well the Kickstarter goes and how well the writing proceeds, of course. But that would be a campaign good for about, I'm thinking 26 game sessions. The idea is that if you play once every 2 weeks, it's 1 year. So 50 weeks in a year. And we've got another couple of things lined up in the pipeline, but we have to be flexible. We are a startup company, so we have to see how every single project goes to see what the future holds.
Okay, but it sounds like a really interesting system. How much does the basic game cost?
Well, for the Dutch version, the manual is 35 euros. This manual is actually what you get in another game for, it's usually in 3 books. It's the player's guide, the DM guide, and the monster manual, and sometimes even a setting guide, so actually almost 4 books. And one of our base philosophies is also, these are the rules, and these are the only rules we're publishing.
Right.
I've seen a lot of games that there are a lot of manuals and source books available, and in many times the system does get hurt by this, because it's very hard to maintain a balance when you've got a lot of different source books, different people writing them. So you don't want to do that, and we also don't want to bring out that one source book which basically has the better classes or the stronger spells than the ones in the core rules, so people will have to buy it. We don't want to do that. We just want to tell stories, and we want to bring out the campaigns, and that's the story of Ambrosia. So we want to concentrate on the storylines, which is actually more work than bringing out a source book. But we think the work is worthwhile, and for me, it doesn't scare me to do a bit of more work. So
okay. So yeah, I think that was all. Do you have any final message to the watchers at home?
Yeah, if you're interested in what you heard here today, please pledge our Kickstarter, because you can help to make this a reality, of course. At this time, I think we're doing okay, but we can always use more pledges. We haven't reached our goal yet. If there's any feedback from you, it's also very much appreciated, because we do think listening to the community is very important. We saw that with the people speaking out about the lack of PDFs. We added them, and there were a lot more pledges suddenly in a couple of days' time. So we do notice that those things help, and we want to make this as much your game as it is ours.
And with that, I think we'll keep it for this episode of Radio Retro Future. So,
Great.
As always, people, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course comment on this video if you've got any questions for Erlend here. And with that, I think I'm just gonna bid you adieu. And as always, make it your way.
Much better than Mars. Mars is dry and cold and dark and red, and I prefer green, fresh, sun, earth, actually.
For steampunk, for example, the future is one of the greatest inspirations, as well as Neo-Victoriana and basically everything from the 19th and the 18th century. It's funny how something that hasn't happened yet can inspire such huge and massive creativity.
Get your stuff done. Get your stuff done. They're waiting on you.